Well, welcome, folks, to this edition of the 700 Club. Listen, the weather has just gone crazy in the United States. There are flash floods, there are tornadoes, and the snowpack in Colorado is the highest it's been in 20 years, and that's just going into the summer. And yet here over in Europe, they're having a heat wave where a lot of people, they don't have adequate air conditioning, and there are people actually dying in Europe of the heat. So we're going to tell you all about it, and here's Dale Hurd with that report.
Severe thunderstorms moving through the South and Midwest left tens of thousands without power Monday night. This after almost 500 reports of wind damage and hail over the weekend. An EF2 tornado with speeds up to 125 miles per hour ripped through South Bend, Indiana.
You can see that this building's roof completely ripped off.
Fortunately, no children were inside this building, the Growing Kids Learning Center. But authorities say the heavy rains did claim the life of an Oklahoma woman who died after her car was swept into a creek. Residents in Jackson, Missouri were cleaning up after Sunday's storm damaged virtually every neighborhood in the city. Floods also rolled through Missouri. 2 kids in the town of Monette had to be rescued when they fell into fast-moving water. Lightning from this same storm destroyed a home in Spring, Texas. And a dangerous lightning strike almost hit fans at this outdoor concert in Kansas. In Houston, the rains nearly cost this man his life. Highway traffic cameras were recording as first responders rescued him from rising waters.
Ultimately, the most important thing is his life. So we was able to get him out of the water.
In the mountains of Colorado, the precipitation came down as snow, 20 inches on the opening day of summer. Officials say the state's snowpack is 40 times normal, also because of heavy spring snow, extending the skiing season and also lowering the risk of wildfires. Meanwhile, Europe is in the grips of a major heat wave. In Paris, authorities have issued an orange alert for intense heat, as much as 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Air conditioning is not widespread in France, and there were 15,000 heat-related deaths during a heat wave in 2003. Here at home, meteorologists say a change in the jet stream will bring a much-needed reprieve from the severe weather over the next few days. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Unbelievable. What is this? Is this global warming or is this something else? We don't know for sure, but it certainly is serious, and I want to thank Dale. I correct what I said. The snowpack is not 20 times, it's 40 times in Colorado. So the snowpack in the Sierras is in many, many feet, and when they let go outside of California, there are going to be some devastating floods in that state as well. Well, in other news, Iran's president is firing back at the Trump administration over the latest sanctions. He's calling the White House, quote, afflicted with mental retardation. That's a nice way to begin diplomatic overtures. John Jessup has more on that.
Thanks, Pat. Iran says the U.S. is waging an economic war against its regime. Meanwhile, at a press conference in Jerusalem this morning, White House National Security Advisor John Bolton said all options remain on the table. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell reports.
Ambassador Bolton warned Iran could violate its commitment to limit the allowable amount of enriched uranium within days.
All of this means that the threat of a nuclear Iran is very real, as are the threats of Iran's support for terrorism, its ballistic missile program, and its other malign activities in the Middle East.
Bolton called Iran the main problem throughout the region.
They are a problem in Iraq, they are a problem in Syria, they're a problem in Lebanon, they're a problem in Yemen, they're a problem in Afghanistan. Their presence in Syria is of particular concern to Israel because of the common border and because of Israel being within range of Iranian missile capabilities that they've been trying to bring into Syria and more recently bring into Iraq.
After weeks of an ongoing crisis, on Monday, President Trump offered Iran a carrot and a stick. First, he imposed new sanctions on Iran's supreme leader, the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, and other key Iranian leaders. Yet he hopes his maximum pressure policy will bring Iran to the table.
We would love to be able to negotiate a deal if they want to. If they don't want to, that's fine too. but we would love to be able to, and frankly, they might as well do it soon.
But Iran rejected Trump's offer. Iran's President Rouhani called the new sanctions outrageous. A spokesman for Iran's foreign ministry said the new sanctions mean the permanent closure of the road of diplomacy. With military action still a possibility, Democrats say the president will need Congress to sign off on a strike. But the president is telling Capitol Hill he doesn't think so.
I like the idea of keeping Congress abreast, but I wouldn't have to do that.
Ambassador Bolton said it would satisfy the U.S. if Iran gave up its pursuit of nuclear weapons and support of terrorism. But in the meantime, he said, President Trump would say all options remain on the table. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Chris. Pat, any clue as to where all this might be headed?
Well, I think we showed our hand already. We have incredible cyber capabilities. The NSA is unparalleled in the world in what it can do, and we already showed that we can target their command and control facilities with cyber attacks. But we haven't begun to warm up to what we could do to Iran. We could literally shut down their power grid and put that whole country in the dark without any electricity at all. I mean, it would be a devastating blow, but we have the capability to do it. And that's without going to a shooting war. The other thing that is very vulnerable are those oil facilities on what's called Harg Island at the edge of Iran, and they are extremely vulnerable to an airstrike. So we could take them out and hurt Iran enormously. And yet they keep screaming death to the big Satan and all that. But it's just bluster. And the Iranian people are wonderful people, and I hate to see what's being done. Their leadership is the mullahs, they're under the grip of an extreme theocracy, and they need, I mean, we ought to be able to do, as the president said, if they want to have prosperity, we'd like to help them. John?
Pat, Russia is warning against U.S. plans to put missiles in Europe, saying it could spark a crisis not seen since the Cold War. Moscow's deputy foreign minister says if the U.S. deploys missiles near the Russian border, it might lead to a situation similar to the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, when for about 2 weeks the U.S. and Russia were locked eye to eye in a nuclear standoff as the U.S. demanded Russia remove nuclear weapons from the island, which sits just about 90 miles away from the U.S. coastline. The Russians eventually backed down. The recent warning comes as a Russian warship made port in Havana's harbor Monday, armed with cruise missiles and other weapons. Well, government officials removed more than 300 migrant children from a Texas Border Patrol station Monday. This after reports that conditions in many detention facilities are unsanitary and lacking basic necessities. Lawmakers are working on a $4.6 billion humanitarian aid bill to help solve the crisis, but disagreements over allocating funds to increase security at the border could stall the measure. House Republicans, Pat, have tried more than 20 times to pass a bill that addresses both humanitarian and security concerns.
You know, I was reading that in a recent poll, Americans are saying the #1 concern right now is border security. It didn't used to be that way, but it's become that right now. And I don't know what it is with the Democrats, but they refuse to give Trump anything. They don't want to give him a victory in anything. And they would prefer to see our country overrun with migrants, our social network shredded because of the arrival of millions of undocumented aliens. You wonder what in the world's wrong with them, because under the Obama administration, Clinton administration, other administrations of the Democrats, they have all been in support of having some kind of barrier to keep all the world out of our country and to preserve the integrity of the United States. But now the Democrats in Congress will not budge because they refuse to give Trump anything. And it's time, as I said over and over again, guys, you're supposed to represent the United States of America in Congress, not your parochial interests of your party. And it's time you start voting for America, not voting for your own petty feud with the president. And here's another crazy one. Bernie Sanders wants to forgive all the student loans. Here's John.
That's right, Pat. Bernie Sanders is pushing to forgive the student loan debt of 45 million Americans. The Democratic presidential candidate's revolutionary proposal would cancel all $1.6 trillion of student debt.
This proposal completely eliminates student debt in this country and ends the absurdity of sentencing an entire generation, the millennial generation, to a lifetime of debt for the crime of doing the right thing.
Sanders says the plan's cost of $2.2 trillion over 10 years will be fully paid for by taxing Wall Street speculation. His proposal to wipe out all student debt is part of a package that would also make public universities, community colleges, and trade schools tuition-free. Pat, back to you.
Once again, the more they go down this road, the more they're losing traditional Democrats, because it is crazy what they're proposing. There isn't enough money. If you took all the money away from every rich person in America, they wouldn't fund this government probably more than a month or so, maybe not even that long. And there's not enough money. The so-called rich don't have it. So who are you going to have to tax? The middle class. You're going to have to start setting a huge tax on the American people. And why should American people pay for the college education of a bunch of people maybe who shouldn't have been in college to start with? And we should consider trade schools and other forms of education for our young instead of a 4-year college at very expensive fees. But why should the rest of American people have to bear that cost? Bernie Sanders isn't telling us. But what I'm saying is it is political suicide, what they keep proposing. And the more they propose it, the more Americans, even the Democrats, are going to say that's more than we can stand. We're going to vote for Trump. John?
Pat, 3 programs, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, make up about 60% of the massive federal budget. And while experts have long predicted the iceberg ahead when it comes to the future of these programs, lawmakers are hesitant to right the ship. Amber Strong has the story.
It seems these days lawmakers are spoiling for a fight on just about every issue. But there's one topic few are even willing to bring up.
The cost of Social Security is expected to exceed the program's income.
Medicare will become insolvent in just 7 years.
Entitlements, the political time bombs ticking louder as time goes on. According to the trustees, Social Security benefits will become insolvent by 2035. Medicare by 2026.
Social Security entirely, and for Medicare to a smaller extent, are affected by so-called federal trust funds. And when those run out, what it means is that there's a shortfall in what they promise to pay in benefits versus what they're able to pay.
And while the payout won't disappear, cuts are likely. So how did we get here?
October 1929.
Social Security came out of the Great Depression, and Medicare from Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society.
During the Depression, of course, the banks were closed, retirement savings had been wiped out. People didn't have jobs, so there was a great deal of need to take care of seniors.
Michael Tanner literally wrote the book on entitlements and says when it comes to Social Security, the country changed, not the program.
When you pay your Social Security taxes, that money is not put away for your retirement. It is simply transferred to people who are already retired today, and then you hope that the next generation pays benefits into the system for your retirement, very much like a pyramid scheme, if you will. The problem is that we are living longer, we're having fewer babies.
Think of it this way. In the 1950s, 16 workers were footing the bill for 1 retiree. Today, less than 3 workers cover that same senior. A handful of the 2020 Democratic candidates have a plan that would push back that Social Security insolvency date, but it includes raising taxes. That's going to be an uphill battle when it comes to gaining support here on Capitol Hill. And while retirement is a key issue among older voters, there's a reason lawmakers shy away.
Seniors who are dependent on Social Security are very easy to scare if you talk about changes to the program. And young people who are going to foot the bill and who are basically going to get the short end coming in the future when the benefits come due, they don't vote, and they certainly don't vote on this issue, so politicians don't care.
Most plans settle around 3 solutions: increase taxes, raise the retirement age, or cut benefits. But until someone makes a move,
they're going to run out the clock. I mean, that's what they did in 1983.
Experts predict politicians will remain at an impasse until forced to act. Amber Strong, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks, Amber. Pat, how do we right the ship?
Well, I think there was the so-called Simpson-Bowles plan that would have righted the ship. It was given to Obama, and he totally ignored it. Congress doesn't want to vote on it. But the truth is, there's nothing more boring than not doing anything. And the idea that a person, when they get to be 65, should sit around and do nothing for the next 30 years is just absurd. You know, people should be productive. They should be occupied in doing something. And the idea of having a retirement age, it used to be that people died when they hit 65. That was the time that they were dead. And so if you had a little bit of some money in a trust fund, that was fine. But Congress can't stand to have a trust fund because they want to invade it. So they invaded it. And now you have all that foolishness about a lockbox, and there is no lockbox. It's a transfer payment from the current money coming in that pays for these benefits. And the Social Security essentially has been running on empty for quite some time. And before long, though, the trust funds are going to run out, and there is nothing left except transfer payment from the federal treasury, which means the current taxes will have to go up to pay for it. And the cost is going to be unconscionable. And the American people at that point of time will say, tough luck, old man. It's time to send you away because we can't afford to keep you. I know that sounds harsh, but you watch the thrust toward euthanasia is going to come down the road because we are not managing that thing. And for politicians to talk about lockboxes and trust funds, it's just nonsense. It's a transfer payment from the current money that comes into those trust funds has immediately been spent, and they get some government IOUs in there. They you know, so big deal. But the IOUs have got to be financed with taxes. So without question, we should have controlled it, and we need to control it right now. The retirement age cannot possibly be 65. And most people are living, the segment of our population over 80 is probably the fastest growing in our country. And setting the level at 75 or even as high as 80 is not unheard of. But Medicare and Social Security, the so-called trust funds, are going to run out very shortly. And when they do, there's going to be a huge hit on the federal budget, and the taxes of most Americans will go up and go up dramatically. Now, that's what's coming unless we fix it. And there doesn't seem to be any willingness to fix it. But we've got to do it. And I'm talking right now as somebody who's 89 years old, and I want to keep living vigorously, and I don't even know what retirement is. John?
Well, Pat, while most investors have been watching the stock market as it flirts with new records, the price of gold has also been moving up, with some experts saying the yellow metal is in a new bull market. Gold is now above $1,400, its highest level since 2013. Some analysts say international tensions with Iran have been a factor as investors look to gold for safety. Others say the dollar is getting weaker, which also helps gold. Some, Pat, now believe gold could go as high as $1,700 in the months ahead.
Well, you know, when it was at 250, I said it was going to go to 800 or 900. It did. Now it's at 900. It's up to 1,300, 1,400. There was a time that gold was pegged at $33 an ounce. And it was against the law to hold gold, as a matter of fact. That was one of Franklin Roosevelt's policies. Then all of a sudden they've opened it up where we can own gold and buy gold and so forth. But those who've had gold have found their assets have gone up dramatically. Those who've held dollars, the dollar has declined. Oh, it's down to almost 3 cents to what it used to be, a whole dollar. As Ronald Reagan said, when he was sick and the doctor said, "Your heart is as sound as a dollar," he said, "I almost fainted with shock," because, you know, that wasn't exactly the measure of being sound. So is gold going to go higher? Absolutely. And I have told people a long time ago that's the way it should be. And those who have invested in gold when it was $250 an ounce, now think of that. It's going $1,300, $1,400, $1,500 an ounce. There's no reason why it won't go higher, because it actually, it doesn't pay interest, but it becomes what we'd call a store of value, and it's nice to have some. Wendy?
You've always been a fan of gold. Absolutely. What about silver?
Well, silver, you know, the Hunt boys cornered the market on silver, and you could get burned pretty badly. They ran the price up to about $50, and then the Commodities Exchange put the squeeze on silver and said, you can only sell it, you can't buy it. And of course that killed the Hunts badly. I mean, it cost them their fortune. But
so keep a little gold in your portfolio.
Well, I bought some gold coins. They're about $250 and $300. You could buy them, and they're on the market. And right now, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't pay any interest. I mean, so I really like stocks that pay interest. All right.